You are watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. 13 days out from the election, but more than the White House is at stake. The factors that could tip the balance of power in the Senate.
The sooner you file that claim, then the faster it is that you can get the funding to begin the process of rebuilding.
The cost of claims rising in Florida. Just how much money could insurance companies pay out for Hurricane Milton alone? Then, McDonald's responds to reports of E. coli linked to their quarter pounder burgers, the steps they are taking, and the toppings they are blaming for the potential contamination. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Less than 2 weeks until a pivotal election, and the two battling candidates are jockeying for the lead in key battleground states. More than 21 million votes have now been cast with early and mail-in ballots, but millions more are still up for grabs. And former President Donald Trump, he is campaigning right now in Georgia in front of a faith-based audience where he spoke about getting Christians to turn out in big numbers.
I think we've really energized a lot of people this time because they've seen how bad it is. This last 4 years it's been a horror show, an absolute horror show. And I think we're going to see those numbers go way up.
Trump will also host a rally in Duluth, Georgia tonight. Right now, polls show Trump having a 2-point advantage over his opponent in that state. But Vice President Kamala Harris, she is not giving up on Georgia. She is gearing up for her own major rally in Atlanta tomorrow. While tonight, she'll participate in a town hall hosted by CNN in Pennsylvania, which, of course, is another must-win state. But before departing for Pennsylvania, the Democratic candidate seized on a recent report citing Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, who told the New York Times that President Trump fits into, quote, the definition of a fascist, and told The Atlantic magazine that Trump said, quote, I need the kind of generals Hitler had.
Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him. This is a window into who Donald Trump really is.
And Trump has yet to respond to those reports. Also tonight, we're learning that around 100 election-related lawsuits have been filed in swing states this year that could really impact the voting process. Most are from conservative groups aiming to prevent some unproven voter fraud at this point. Others focus on voter rolls, signature and ID requirements, and vote counting procedures. Legal action from liberal groups is mostly centered around broadening voting access. And when Americans head to the polls in 13 days, they're also deciding the balance of power in Congress. Currently, Democrats hold a slim majority in the U.S. Senate, but some tight races could really shake things up. The National News Desk's Atra Al-Nashar reports on the Senate seats up for grabs.
Emergency supplemental appropriation.
There's not much a president can get done without the Senate. It's why Senate candidates in tight races, like in Wisconsin, are getting almost as much hype as the presidential candidates.
They're going to need a Senate full of public servants like Tammy Baldwin.
Come on, Eric. We got to get this guy elected.
Incumbent Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin fighting to keep her seat from Republican challenger Eric Hovde. Recent polls show Baldwin's lead is narrowing. Next door in Michigan, Democratic Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin and former Republican Congressman Mike Rogers competing for the seat of retiring Democratic Senator Debbie Stabenow. Like in much of the country, the economy and winning over union voters are central focuses of the campaign.
This factory is being upgraded and will save 700 mid-Michigan auto jobs. But Mike Rogers says, I think it's a bad investment.
Wages keep falling, prices keep rising, and the liberals are making it worse.
For incumbent Democratic senators from more conservative states, Sherrod Brown in Ohio and Jon Tester in Montana, it's about convincing Republican voters to cross party lines.
Sherrod Brown is fighting back. He wrote a bill that Donald Trump signed to crack down on drugs at the border.
We got Democrats and Republicans in Montana, but they're all libertarians. They all love freedom. None of them want the government telling them how to live their lives.
Here's what the balance of power in the Senate looks like right now. So Republicans would only need a net gain of 2 seats to take the majority. But if former President Trump wins, they'd only need 1 because his vice president would be the tie-breaking vote.
Republicans are essentially guaranteed to pick up a seat in West Virginia with the retirement of Senator Joe Manchin, a former Democrat. Where they could lose a seat is Texas. A new poll by Emerson College in the Hills shows incumbent Republican Senator Ted Cruz in a statistical dead heat with his Democratic challenger, Congressman Colin Allred.
So this and other competitive races may come down to just a handful of votes.
This is really interesting, Atra. Texas usually is not a state you think would be competitive for Democrats. So what's really behind that?
Yeah, if there is a red state, it is Texas. But if you look deeper into that Emerson College Hill poll, we see that independents support Allred in higher numbers than Cruz, and that's where he's getting that competitive edge there. And the poll also shows that more voters have an unfavorable view of Cruz than they do of Allred. So Democrats are trying to keep this momentum going in Texas. Vice President Harris is going to hold a rally with Allred in Houston on Friday, and they're expected to focus on abortion rights.
Could be a really historic Senate race, that's for sure. Atril Nashar reporting for us in Washington, D.C. Thank you. A Colorado man accused of threatening election officials has pleaded guilty to one count of making interstate threats. 45-year-old Teek Tai Brockbank admitted in court today that he made threats online to kill judges, law enforcement agents, and Colorado and Arizona state officials. This was a reversal of an earlier not guilty plea. Brockbank is in jail and will be sentenced in February. Today, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announced a $1 million fund to repair fisheries and aquatic businesses impacted by Hurricanes Helene and Milton. The governor's office also said they are seeking additional compensation for these businesses with claims made to the United States Commerce Department. Meanwhile, we're getting a better idea of the total cost for cleanup following those two disasters. The National News Desk's Stephanie Valderrama is in Miami with more.
Well, as of today, more than $2 billion in insured losses have been reported to the Office of Insurance Regulation from Hurricane Milton. And that's about $1 billion more than the total amount of insured losses reported so far from Hurricane Helene. Just into our newsroom at this hour, according to the State Office of Insurance Regulation, there have been a little more than 230,000 claims filed from Hurricane Milton. Most of those are residential property claims. The Office of Insurance Regulation estimates about 12% of the claims are closed. Now, the number of claims could still rise. I actually spoke with Mark Jenkins, a spokesperson for AAA. He tells me families have up to 1 year to file a claim if they suffer damages because of a named storm.
Obviously, the sooner you file that claim, then the faster it is that you can get the funding to begin the process of rebuilding.
Well, listen to this. According to insurance experts, one of the most common questions that they are getting is whether or not their insurance covers temporary housing if their home was destroyed or deemed unlivable due to the damage. Well, Mark Friedlander, the Florida spokesperson for the Insurance Information Institute, actually sent us this statement. He explains that, quote, additional living expenses or loss of use of coverage is typically included in your standard home, condo, or renter's insurance policy. And that covers your temporary living expenses if you are displaced due to a hurricane or tornado. But he goes on to say National Flood Insurance Program policies do not include this coverage, but some private ones may. So this is certainly coverage you should ask your insurance agent to explain to you. Now, as a reminder, now is a great time to review your policy, considering we still have a few weeks left of hurricane season, which does end on November 30th.
Well, DHS has identified over 500 migrants in the United States who could be linked to the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua as either members, victims, or witnesses. That's according to NBC News, reporting that around 100 others were already confirmed to be members. The gang is in at least 15 states. It's hard to know the exact number because Venezuela withholds criminal history information from the United States. And it comes after we learned illegal migrant crossings dropped to the lowest level since August of 2020, last month. Customs and Border Protection announced the Border Patrol came across around 54,000 illegal migrants. The president of McDonald's USA says he is confident you can eat there despite the E. coli outbreak linked to Quarter Pounder burgers. Today, he told NBC News the item is now off the menu in some stores, and the company is working with the CDC. The agency says there have been 49 reported cases, 10 hospitalizations, and 1 death. Slivered onions and quarter-pound beef patties are being looked at as the potential causes. With human cases of bird flu now reported in 6 states, records suggest the government's actions may have contributed to the spread of the disease. Reuters says newly revealed documents show the USDA relaxed an emergency order in the spring aimed at preventing bird flu from spreading in dairy cows, following pressure from state and industry officials. And more than 20,000 low-income patients in Massachusetts have been told they will need to find new doctors next year. This follows failed negotiations between Boston Children's Hospital, UMass Memorial, and Tenet Hospitals with the state's second largest health insurer, Point32 Health. The insurance company blames rising medical prices that make it unaffordable to cover certain state-subsidized insurance plans. Contract negotiations are continuing as open enrollment for Massachusetts is about to begin on November 1st. Developing now, at least 4 dead and as many as 14 injured in Ankara in what Turkish authorities are calling a terrorist attack. This morning, multiple gunmen stormed a state-run aerospace and defense company. Gunshots and at least 1 explosion was heard. Turkish Interior Minister saying that at least 2 of the attackers also died in the attack, and it's not clear who was behind the assault. No groups have claimed responsibility, and an investigation is ongoing. Tonight, Secretary of State Antony Blinkin in Saudi Arabia, his second day of meetings in the Middle East as he makes a last-ditch effort to revive truce talks before the U.S. election and the end of the Biden administration. This is Blinken's 11th trip to the Mideast since October 7th, working to halt hostilities and get the hostages held captive in Gaza home. Before departing for Saudi Arabia, Blinken held several meetings in Israel where he reiterated to officials that now is the best time to engage Arab partners to achieve long-lasting peace and security.
An incredible opportunity in this region to move in a totally different direction, one that actually provides in a durable way for Israel's security, for its place in the region, a country that's integrated, working with its Arab partners, accepted by them. You've got an axis of resistance on the one hand. You can see a partnership for peaceful coexistence on the other hand. Saudi Arabia would be right at the heart of that.
The remarks came after a rocket attack earlier today from Lebanon's Hezbollah, briefly forcing the secretary to go to an air raid shelter. No casualties were reported, according to Israeli authorities. That attack, possibly a response to an Israeli strike that Hezbollah confirmed today, killed a top official, widely expected to be the group's next leader. Meantime, in Gaza, strikes claiming more lives in the northern part of the enclave, where Israel has intensified its bombardment surrounding hospitals and refugee shelters. Israel, which says it is preventing Hamas fighters from regrouping, has ordered residents there to head south. But doctors there say moving hospitalized patients is nearly impossible.
We cannot evacuate the hospital with more than 150 patients, including children on ventilators and newborns in incubators.
Health officials say they are at a breaking point and are asking for humanitarian help as medicine, fuel, and food are in short supply at area hospitals. Voting right now underway in Washington by the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers Union on a new contract from Boeing. The offer includes a 35% pay raise over 4 years and gives a $7,000 upfront bonus per worker. But as members line up to vote, there seems to be a large contingent that are still opposed to this deal.
Yeah, I feel pretty good that we're going to vote this down because it's a horrible contract. It's not even close to what we want or anything that's any good for any of us.
Meanwhile, before the vote began, Boeing announced that in the third quarter of this year, they lost $6 billion. The CEO says they may have to sell some assets and downsize to move forward. But first, they need to near the near 6-week strike to end. The vote will close tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Coming up, the top reasons people are buying homes at the lowest pace in almost 14 years. Then the airline hit with a $50 million fine and the group of people behind it who say they were treated wrongly. And later, the efforts underway to stop mass shootings as Maine prepares to mark 1 year since the tragedy in Lewiston. We'll be right back. Tonight, new data on U.S. home sales have fallen to the weakest annual pace in nearly 14 years. That's according to the National Association of Realtors, which says existing home sales, they have fallen by 1% in September from August, the second straight month of decline. Falling mortgage rates in July and August were expected to bring more buyers into the market. But the latest data, well, that indicates buyers may be holding out for rates to fall even further to offset those high home prices, or that they're waiting for the uncertainty of this year's election to settle. New tonight, Ukraine is about to get $50 billion in loans, but it's not coming from American taxpayers. The White House says interest earned on profits from Russia's frozen central bank assets will be used as collateral. The U.S. is providing $20 billion of that, and the rest is coming from the European Union, United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, and others. The United States loan will be split between helping Ukraine's economy and helping its military, which will require congressional approval. This comes as the White House confirms there are at least 3,000 North Korean troops already in Russia getting training on drones and other equipment. Ukraine says another 10,000 North Korean soldiers are preparing to be deployed to Ukraine. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says they are not sure what these troops are intending to do.
What exactly they're doing, left to be seen. These are things that we need to sort out. We'll have more for you on that later.
Austin warns if North Korea joins the war on Russia's side, it will be a, quote, very, very serious issue. Both Russia and North Korea deny any troop movement. North Korea has one of the largest standing armies in the world, but hasn't fought in a major conflict since the Korean War. American Airlines has to pay out $50 million for improperly handling wheelchairs. The Transportation Department says for 5 years, the airline has failed to provide wheelchair assistance to disabled passengers, damaged thousands of wheelchairs, and injured some wheelchair users. American says it's making investments to improve its handling of wheelchairs and compensating affected passengers. For athletes who play contact sports, it has been hard to identify the moment a serious head injury occurs. But new research suggests a common motion might actually notify observers of a concussion. According to a study published today in the scientific journal Diagnostics, a quick shake of the head after a hard hit could signal a concussion. Researchers surveyed hundreds of athletes at the high school, college, or semi-professional level, and they found that almost 75% of the time an athlete experienced that gesture, and they ended up with a concussion thereafter. Still, A head shake is currently not a part of a formal concussion screening. A therapy that uses the mind to ease mental health concerns appears to be highly effective. Medical reporter Liz Bona shares new research showing that mindfulness-based stress reduction, also known as MBSR, may be as effective as taking certain medications for depression and anxiety.
It has to be combined with other healthy habits.
Mindfulness is really the art, actually, of paying attention to the present moment as it is, without judgment. And the key part is the without judgment.
But Lauren Albarella, a yoga therapist at Ohio's Market at B, says this practice is life-changing.
It can be a practice that you do anytime during the day, just to stop and pay attention and notice maybe your body, maybe your breathing, or even just focusing on one thing at a time.
And as Denny Krause has discovered, life-altering.
I thought of it as strengthening and stretching, which it still is. I think it's also a lot of body awareness and body acceptance.
There are plenty of reasons to practice mindfulness.
Better sleep, better emotional regulation, reduced symptoms of anxiety and depression.
And in depression and anxiety, this National Institutes of Health study recently compared mindfulness to a common medication used to treat these conditions, known as a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, or SSRI. The medication is known under the brand name Lexapro and is commonly used to treat anxiety and depression. In 276 adults with these conditions, the comparison showed the medication had a more rapid effect, but the mindfulness was as effective at reducing anxiety in just 8 weeks. And even if you're not practicing it for a mental health condition,
I think one of the most noticeable changes is being more centered during my day, more intentional about what I'm doing and not rushing from event to event.
Coming up, the T-shirt a Texas voter was wearing that nearly got him kicked out of the polls. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Maine with new efforts to prevent mass shootings like the one that happened a year ago.
Over the past year, the Lewiston mass shooting has prompted hearings and debate over missed warning signs, gaps in mental health, gun control, and law enforcement communication. The shooter, an Army reservist, had been briefly hospitalized in New York just weeks before for acting erratically.
Crisis intervention.
Congress now pushing the Army to better track mental health and potential brain damage for those working in munitions. And just a week ago, about 100 survivors and victims' family members filed a new lawsuit against the Army and others, hoping to force more answers.
Jason Jones walked into the Southside ISD admin building this morning wearing this T-shirt. He says he expected to cast his ballot with no problems until he was stopped by an election official.
The judge there didn't like my shirt and told me to leave or
not gonna let me vote.
According to a Texas state election code, electioneering is strictly forbidden at the polls. The law says it's illegal to, quote, post, use, or distribute political signs or literature within 100 feet of a polling place. Only Jones says there was no sign. That's when Southside ISD police were called.
The cops said there's nothing posted, so they can't do nothing about it.
Baltimore County Police in step with residents in Parkville.
Any concerns or anything that you might have, please let us know.
A community walk in the Halstead neighborhood. Police wanting to hear from residents Tuesday about any public safety concerns they may have.
Definitely car theft.
Dorena Washington.
They showed up today, and I hope they continue.
And Elizabeth Padilla.
They need better patrolling. They need to respond when we call.
Two longtime residents looking for answers, concerned over crime on their block.
But a guy got killed right there, right on that street. I heard the ba, 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 and I looked through my window, saw him throwing on the, I mean, how can I feel safe to even walk around here on my own neighborhood if somebody's just gonna come and get shot?
Coming up, just how much LA Dodgers player Shohei Ohtani's historic 50th home run ball sold for at an auction. Whomever owns Los Angeles Dodger phenom Shohei Ohtani's historic 50th home run ball is in line to get this, $4.4 million. The ball sold in an auction for a record high price for any ball ever sold. The auction opened with a starting bid of $500,000 on September 27th and closed late last night. But currently, 3 individuals, they claim to own that ball, having possessed it at some point after Ohtani became the first in the league's history to hit 50 home runs and steal 50 bases in one season on September 19th. And ESPN reports the money will go into an account until those lawsuits are settled. That does it for this edition of the National News Desk. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.